Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an underdiscussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. And in this expedition, we try our best to be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week, we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson, and we travel back to the 90s for the Splatterfest Dead Alive and find out if the party's really over. Nick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Out here kicking ass for the Lord.
Kicking ass for the Lord. I kick ass for the Lord. I love the New Zealand accent. I think it's so good.
I do too. I was a big Flight of the Conchords fan. I mean,
Of
I'd seen this movie before that show, but I love that show.
Of course.
And I love New Zealanders, the few that I've actually come across in my life.
Yes, absolutely.
Not too many of them, unfortunately.
No, I filmed the wedding once of the groom was from New Zealand, his whole family was from New Zealand, and the DJ or the MC at the catering hall accidentally called him Australian, and that did not go over very well at all.
No, that's one of my favorite Flight of the Conchords episodes. I didn't know there's a rivalry there until that show came along.
Yeah.
Why didn't he get married in New Zealand if he was from there?
Because his wife was from here.
Okay. I still would have gone there.
I mean, he lives here. That was again. This is somebody I shot a wedding for 15 years ago, Nick. I don't really have a lot of information about him.
Why would anyone who is from New Zealand anyway? Why would we come here in the first place? This place sucks.
They had a beautiful wedding in New York City.
Sure.
Beautiful wedding in New York City.
I figured.
No. Beautiful New York City wedding.
Okay. I guess that's the one thing they don't have.
The Tribeca rooftop was the venue. Very nice.
Yeah, you never see a Peter Jackson movie set in Tribeca on a rooftop.
No. Though I do. There's a moment in this movie. We'll get into it.
Oh, I'm sorry. King Kong has a New York sequence.
It's true. Yes, it does. It does. It very much does. Very famously, King Kong has a New York sequence. Where there's a scene near the end where someone's in a shed, and I'm pretty sure it's the same shed from Bad Taste. I'm pretty
it's
sure.
Gotta be. Yeah. I know exactly the shed you're talking about and the scene you're talking about, and yeah, it feels like he's going home a little bit.
Yeah,
and really, I mean, this movie we're gonna get into. We're talking about Dead Alive today.
We are talking about Dead Alive.
Or
I said that. I said that in the intro.
I think so. I just wanted to remind everyone.
And I think so. I definitely did. I have a script and everything, Nick.
What'd you call it? You called it Dead Alive?
Thanks for listening, Nick. I called it Dead Alive.
I can't write. That was like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. I called it Dead Alive. It's called Braindead, and outside of the U.S., it was called Dead Alive here. One of the rare times where I feel like the United States name is better than the original name.
I think it's a lot better. I think it describes the movie a lot better.
Yes. I mean, they're also kind of brain dead, but yes.
Yeah, but Dead Alive, Night of the Living Dead, it kind of throws back to the oxymoron, the George Romero oxymoron. Braindead to me suggests, well, there is, the reason they made that change is there's a movie that I've always wanted to see from 1990 called Braindead with both Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. Who knew you could put those two guys in the same movie? But apparently in 1990 you could. And I believe it's like a sci-fi, like a mad scientist kind of thing. And that sounds more like Braindead than people get bitten by a rat monkey and turn into zombies. That sounds like Dead Alive to me. So.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all. Again, I think it's a better title for sure. It's just funny because usually when they make those changes, it's usually for the worse.
Yes.
And this time, I think it was probably for the better.
The best title, though, and I forget which country, it's a Spanish-speaking country, and the title is Your Mother Ate My Dog in Spanish. You know.
I mean, that's great.
Madre Perro. I know a couple Spanish words, but what a great title for a movie.
That's a very constricted view, though, of one moment from the movie. Not really a title that describes the whole movie.
But it's such a good title, and it's such a good line in the movie, and I don't know, I like it.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a Spanish co-production.
Right.
It was not, but that's why there is a Spanish leading lady in the movie, in an otherwise not very eclectic cast of people.
It's nice to see, yeah, someone from not New Zealand in a Peter Jackson movie.
Yeah,
which we'll see a lot of soon.
Very soon. We're pretty much getting there. This is Peter Jackson's third movie. Obviously, we've already covered his first movie, Bad Taste. The second movie, Meet the Feebles, and this is his it's his breakout movie, right? Braindead, Dead Alive. Breakout in the sense that it puts him on the map, I think, with horror fans. You know, makes him probably a Fangoria favorite, after this, and sets sort of a reputation that he would almost immediately, he never makes another movie like this ever again. Like this is the end of this run of, I mean, this movie doesn't even have that small of a budget. Honestly, you could imagine this movie getting made for this budget now, right? The amount of money that it cost. But it's the end of this, extreme horror comedy, gross out thing, right? We're done with this after this, which it's funny to think about because, I think when you first learn about, like, if Lord of the Rings is the first Peter Jackson movie you see, or the first time you're aware of his name as a director, right? You hear all this stuff from people who are big horror fans being like, oh, you have no idea, like, his career before this was crazy and all this stuff. And they're not wrong, right? But it feels almost like, oh, there's going to be 6 movies like this, right? That are just like these, like, horror gross out things. And like I said, this is it. After this, we go way legit. The next movie is like, it's going to be so crazy. It's going to be it's got to be one of the biggest tonal whiplashes we've ever experienced on this show, like,
for sure,
going from this to Heavenly Creatures. But this is another movie that he wrote with his future partner, Fran Walsh. Also, Stephen Sinclair. It's based on a story by Stephen Sinclair. We talked about last week, this was supposed to be a second movie, but he couldn't get the funding put together for it. And so he did the much more commercially viable Meet the Feebles second.
Cheaper.
Definitely cheaper, yes. But again, like, a crazy thing for them to be like, we won't give you money for this, but we will give you money
We'll give you a third of that budget to do your perverted puppet movie.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, we even make a documentary about you and put it on New Zealand TV, which is...
Let me say this before we go any farther.
Yeah.
The fact that New Zealand has funded all of these movies thus far. I mean, look, we always talk on the show about these filmmakers who are... they have the career they have, but we're always talking about, like, kind of the alternate paths, the sliding doors thing. I never even saw that movie, but I always use that as a metaphor. The idea that, like, all these directors, like, he could have just been, like, if he wanted to just stay in this lane for the rest of his career, which, filmmakers have kind of done that, and then maybe done a Sam Raimi thing, gone off and done some comedy, some superhero movies, some, like, real genre stuff, some silly over-the-top genre stuff. He definitely could have done that. But to this point, these people in New Zealand, this film commission who just gives New Zealanders money to make movies and then promotes those movies very heavily, making documentaries, getting those filmmakers on TV. Yep. Again, it's not a big country, but, like, the fact that he could do the kind of stuff that he did in these movies, and these, like, official government people will be like, cool, we'll give you money for that. We'll promote that. We'll let people know about this movie where, a guy fights a disembodied colon in the climax or close to the climax. I think that's pretty incredible. And I really, I like New Zealand, as I said, but I think that makes them especially cool. A country where the film commission would just do this kind of stuff.
I mean, to be fair, I think most countries have film commissions that don't really get so involved in the content as much as trying to bring up, young filmmakers.
Oh, but I mean, I've seen movies, made national cinemas, right? Like that's why you establish a film commission is to sort of compete on the world stage. You're a smaller country. You're not the US. You're not Bollywood. You're not China. But, you have a movie industry. You have filmmakers who are young and hungry. And, you want movies that they don't have to always positively reflect the country that they're made in, but they're usually kind of prestige pick fair stuff that's going to work on the world stage, not so much in a cult movie sort of way the way these things do, but just in a they can compete for the best international picture Oscar,
I would say the ones
like
that break through that we hear about are those. I'm sure there are a ton of movies that get funded with some amount of national funding that we never even hear about, right? That
use 700 liters or whatever.
Well, I mean, Peter Jackson's a special guy. I'm not saying like that. Nothing. There really isn't anything like Dead Alive, even that exists, right? But
but all I'm saying is, we're used to genre films. We're used to exploitation movies that are funded by, like Roger Corman or someone like that, or these.
Well, we're used to America, Nick, where they don't give a shit about the arts, so they just let people.
Italy too. I mean, they have like a B movie sort of industry, and it wasn't, as far as I know, right? Like they did. The Italian government will give Italian filmmakers money, but to make stuff like Cinema Paradiso, not to make stuff like, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I love the idea that you go to the government for money to make your gross genre movie that is going to be, like you said, like a Fangoria darling and really win over the midnight movie crowd. And they're like, yeah, take our money.
Yeah. I just think that we here are not, it seems like a very foreign idea to us. And I think that it's not so foreign there. I think that's part of one of the avenues that you just go through, right? When you're a young filmmaker trying to get other, you apply for money from the government to make your movie because that's what they do in other countries, and I mean, I'm sure not many of them are like this, but, I don't think all of them are Cinema Paradiso either. That's all I'm saying.
I love that movie, by the way. I don't mean to, that was the first thing that popped into my head.
Docking Cinema Paradiso.
I know. I want to make it sound like I was. I love that movie very much.
So this movie, like I said, this would be a Spanish co-production. That's why Diana Penalver is the female lead in the movie, but I guess Peter Jackson liked her enough where he kept her even when the co-financing fell through.
Good choice. She's great.
Yeah, she is good. Another one of these Peter Jackson things, which is like you learn this stuff very quickly from these people who are kinds of pains in the ass as movie's supposed to be. Because I'm watching the movie, right? This is before I read the fact she sent over, where I'm like, why is it set in 1954? Like, why is it set in this year? And Jackson just wanted it to be. It was supposed to be modern set. There's nothing particularly 1950s about it, other than like some stuff around the edges that he ends up doing, right? And he says that in the 50s, which of course causes lots of headaches about like, okay, now it's going to cost more because now we have to have cars that look like they're from the 50s. We have to have, we have to set up this grocery store like it looks like it's a 50s grocery store and it's not a 90s grocery store. It's like all of this kind of stuff, right, ends up happening in this movie. The project budget's $3 million. It's shot on 16 millimeter in order to spend more money on the effects. It's filmed in Wellington, just like all his other movies have been filmed in Wellington. Bob McCarran and Richard Taylor, once again, Richard Taylor again will be part of his filmmaking career from here forward. Helps with the effects. Bob McCarran is somebody who's done effects on a lot of other movies. He's also a safety person and he did safety for the 2000 Olympics or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I looked at his Wikipedia because I was like, wondering, did he work at Weta after this or something? Nope. He did some effects stuff for big movies, like for The Matrix and stuff like that.
Nobody got hurt by that lawnmower, I'm assuming. So he's pretty good at safety and special effects.
But he doesn't even have that many credits. It's just so funny. He just kind of does it sometimes and does this other thing sometimes, with Jackson creating some of the other models and stuff like that. And like you mentioned, 300 liters of blood.
I think I said 700. I think it's 300. But
300 liters of blood.
It's a lot of blood.
It's a lot of blood for the ending sequence, and it actually came in under budget, $45,000 under budget, which he used apparently to make
evolving as a filmmaker. Yeah, everything else.
A scene that we're going to talk about later on in the movie, which
Peter Jackson's favorite scene, and possibly mine too.
Okay, I mean, I would love to hear your reasoning why.
Well, and I should say it's one of the more memorable. I don't know. It's very hard for me to pick a favorite here because there's so much that I just think is hilarious and awesome.
All right, so let's talk about we've mentioned, I think, offhandedly a little bit, but what's our previous sort of experience with this movie before this viewing? Nick, what's your situation with this movie?
I'm trying to remember when I saw this the first time. So I've talked on the show when we were talking about Peter Jackson before. I grew up in a neighborhood. I was very, very lucky to have a video store where the guy who ran it, really cool guy, was into cult movies. And I remember when this came out on video, I guess it was 93 or 94. That's about the year I started going there. I remember them promoting the shit out of this movie. There's like a stand-up and a poster and the goriest movie of all time. They're really making a big deal out of it. It was rated R. It did have that kind of signage and stuff. Mostly I was going to the store with my parents at the time, and they were not letting me rent Dead Alive, but I knew of it. I always wanted to rent it, and I'm trying to remember. I think I probably saw this late 90s. I guess for me, with Peter Jackson, right? There's pre-Lord of the Rings and there's post-Lord of the Rings, right? Because I think a lot of people, they saw Fellowship of the Ring and it's like, what did this guy do? I want to see everything. He made this incredible movie. What else has he done, that might be some kind of prototypical version of this? And I'm pretty sure I saw this before I saw Fellowship of the Ring. I was a huge fan of The Frighteners. I think I saw that when it came out in 96 and knew of this movie, knew who Peter Jackson was. Not because I'd seen the movie, but because I'd seen the poster and the marketing materials in the store. So my guess is I saw this late 90s, rented it from there, obviously, and just, was kind of blown away by it. I mean, it's love this movie or hate it, and I love it. I think that's we've made that pretty clear already. You're not going to forget it. It's not a movie that you just sort of see and it's like, did I see Dead Alive? I don't really remember. It is a movie that leaves an impression. one way or the other. And so I'm pretty sure that was my history with it. And I guess I was already at some level a Peter Jackson fan before I saw this because of The Frighteners. I'm really looking forward to that one too, to talking about that one. And then this one has always been kind of, every time I saw anything else he ever did, it's always like, yes, he's a Lord of the Rings guy, but also he's the Dead Alive guy.
I mean, I would argue at this point he's much more the Lord of the Rings guy than he is the Dead Alive guy. But I think at that time I totally get it. Of course, I mean, but I think oddly his career has gone. I keep going back to Sam Raimi because I think they're very good analogs for each other, and especially after you watch this movie, you're like, if this guy could look at you with a straight face and not say that he was inspired by The Evil Dead, I would be like, I would punch him in the face because I'm like, you're absolutely lying. But which is totally fine, of course. But
he's acknowledged his Evil Dead
at this point he was. But I feel like at the beginning of his career, he was kind of very much like, no, it's really like these other people that I'm really like influenced by. But I think that he is such an interesting guy and filmmaker because I've seen this movie one time, probably 20 plus years ago, right around the time Fellowship of the Ring came out, when I was doing let me go back and watch Peter Jackson movies, and I remember watching it then. I had very little snapshots in my mind. The lawnmower scene, obviously, the big mom monster at the end, and a couple of other things, right, were kind of in my mind. But most of it was watching it this time. I was like, it's basically like watching a new movie to me because I really don't remember any of the ins and outs, right, of the movie. And I think that we watched this again, it's so weird. This movie, for it being directed by one of the most famous filmmakers of all time, these first three movies are impossible to find in really any way, especially online.
Legally,
in
they're all on YouTube.
They're all on YouTube, which
you can hear that from us. But
I'm not committing a crime watching it on YouTube. If YouTube wants to take it down, they can. Obviously, I mean, obviously none of these are owned by studios. This is all Jackson's, production company in New Zealand or whatever like that. So I don't think they're really breaking any laws or anything like that. But this movie especially, you cannot. I was so shocked that you cannot find it. You can't even buy it on iTunes. I would have bought it on iTunes
I would like to own this movie for sure,
or whatever. But there's 6 versions on YouTube. Nick messaged me a few days ago and was like, "By the way, I'm watching the longest possible version of this movie." So I was like, okay, I guess I must also watch the longest possible version of this movie. It's an hour and 43 minutes.
And then I learned later, it's an hour and 43 minutes. And actually there's a 97-minute cut that Peter Jackson likes better. And whenever that's the case, I always want to watch the one that the director, the director's vision is the one that I want to see.
Yeah, of course.
There's an 85-minute, I believe that was the American cut, pretty heavily censored. I will say the version I watched, there are scenes that go on longer than they need to. Not fun scenes, just kind of getting from point A to point B sort of scenes that are sort of unnecessary. I believe when he goes to the vet's office, I think that's one of them where you can kind of tell where it ends in the...
You can tell through the whole movie where it's the actual finished stuff and where it's the unrated stuff.
Almost like work print quality.
The color timing, there's no color timing done on the or very, very little, very scratch color timing done. If people don't know, color timing is just how they match, how they create they kind of set the color, right?
Continuity from shot to shot.
So they go okay, this is what white is, this is what this is whatever. And that's often a late stage process in finishing a movie shot on film, right? Now if people are, maybe they edit digitally or even on their phone, when you're setting color for color correcting your clips or something like that, that's basically what this is, except it's a much more important part of the process. Because on film, it's much more difficult, right? That's it's a very late stage process thing. So often what will happen is you'll create a work print or a first cut, and then you'll make your cuts down from there, and then the only thing you're kind of color timing is what's actually being put onto reels that's going to go into the cinemas to be shown, right? That because you're really kind of, especially in a low budget, you're really kind of having to decide really big time what your choices are going to be, right? So there are scenes in this that are, just, they look they're not very saturated. They don't have the same color palette. They don't look finished, right? The effects are finished, but not like the film hasn't been, finished in the correct way.
Which kind of surprised me because I thought that this longest version, the hour and 43-minute version, had been released somewhere. So maybe that print just doesn't exist, and this is just someone kind of pieced back together. I mean, this would be like deleted scenes on the DVD, and there was, I think there was a DVD, there's a Blu-ray.
There was a couple, yeah. There was no
now.
Blu-ray ever in America. I think there was no American Region 1 Blu-ray. They only released that, I think, in the UK and overseas. There was a DVD here. There was an unrated cut, which is what this is, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. But I guess that's the only reason I wanted to say that was because it is, some of the stuff is clearly things they cut out to secure from the ratings board, whatever rating they wanted. And some of it's just, scenes that, as you watch a movie in its rough cut, you're like, okay, I think we get the point here. Let's move on to the next thing. There's a little bit of that here. So
yeah, I definitely was like, we didn't need to watch this 1 hour and 45-minute long version or 46-minute version of the movie.
You were blaming me for it the whole time.
I'm blaming you for it the whole time.
Because I was like, we have to watch the longest
Nick was like, I'm really trying to avoid
Yep.
anything shorter. And I was like, okay, I'll just watch this version of the movie. So again, I probably watched either the 97-minute cut you're talking about or even the shorter one when I first watched it, whatever was available to me at that time, right? I mean, obviously, I remember the poster, like you mentioned, like the skull. I mean, it's so funny that that's the poster because it's like an image from the movie, obviously, but it's like an image that is in the movie for,
barely,
10 seconds. It's just so funny. I mean, it's a very, visually, memorable thing, but it's just funny that that's the poster considering all of the crazy stuff that's in the movie.
That
right?
too, like that I was talking about, like the sci-fi vibes, the other movie Braindead. I always thought this was some kind of I almost thought this was like a mad science, like where the zombies came. I guess I knew it was a zombie movie, but yeah, something about that always suggested to me this was more of a science-y zombie movie rather than a nature-y zombie movie.
Yeah, this is like a 28 Days Later situation for the most part. So yeah, so
well, it's a King Kong situation.
It is because it starts on Skull Island.
Don't bring stuff back from Skull Island. I think
I mean, this movie really is at the core of it a bunch of stupid white people not listening to the people who know better. Is really what it is.
So it's King Kong.
Exactly. That's why it so resonates for them. And maybe that's why he made it this way, right? Because obviously we've talked about how much he's indebted to King Kong over the years. But I think that, just an overall thing. I think this is obviously, this is his best movie of the three so far that we've watched. It's the most movie that we've watched. It has, and I think it flows the best. I still think, and I think even if we were watching the 97-minute cut, which is probably a quicker, tighter cut, I still think it's one of the things where he's still figuring out story structure, right? And still trying to figure out that balance between like the zany and the zany for zany's sake, gross for gross sake, and then also like, okay, but also we're gonna have these like kind of dialogue scenes and like, kind of story setup scenes or whatever. And I think the balance is much better here. And it definitely has a flow, unlike like Bad Taste. The problem was it's just like, oh, here's a scene and here's a scene and here's a scene. And we kind of paste it together. This has something in its structure and its bones that gives it some propulsion. But I still think that there are definitely times during this movie where I was like, okay, I really think we could fast forward like where we're going here and get to another big thing happening, because I don't really care about like the mental distress of this character. Like I just want to see the next crazy, kill scene. But the last 30 minutes of this movie are undeniable. Obviously, like it is unbelievable what is done in the last 30 minutes of the movie. And all throughout the movie, there are just these crazy effects that impressive still now to me, gore-wise, makeup-wise, puppetry, however you want to, put it together. That stuff was incredibly impressive to me. And I think this one has genuinely a couple of pretty like nice, although obviously very elevated and heightened performances by actors in it,
this has a through line, right? I mean,
it has a through line, yeah.
It's kind of this Oedipal thing. It's a man versus mommy movie, and like I think like Bad Taste doesn't have that at all, right? Like what
No.
is the thesis of Bad Taste? What is Bad Taste about? It's about here's people drinking puke and here's an exploding head and
Mhm.
that's, here's some machine gun fire, lots and lots of machine gun fire.
Yes. No machine gun fire in this. There's no guns
no-
in this.
Yeah.
Basically, which is great.
And then, we talked about Meet the Feebles. I mean, that at least, if you wanted to sort of, and I don't want to do a dissertation on Meet the Feebles. I don't want to think about Meet the Feebles anymore. This was such a nice break from Meet the Feebles that, overall is kind of a showbiz satire, as we talked about, and does have kind of this, this acidic sort of take on celebrity and what it means to be famous and those kinds of things. This one, but like I wouldn't say that there are any endearing characters really in Meet the Feebles. I mean, Robert Wobert. At the center of that movie, there is kind of a cute little romance there, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of actual kind of heart behind it or development behind it. Whereas this, I really am kind of on board for the romance at the center. I mean, it's a romance with zombies and lots of other things, and it's a rom-com that just so happens.
I would say this, Nick. It is a zombie movie that happens to have some romance subplot in it. If you're gonna come in here with a thesis that this is really a romantic comedy that just happens to have zombies in it, like I think that's an insane take.
I think it's I do. I actually do think that. I think it's a movie about overcoming, psychological trauma in a particularly Freudian Oedipal sort of way, on the way to sort of becoming the kind of person who can be in a loving relationship with another person. And all of that is represented on screen by zombies. Lots and lots of zombies.
Yeah. I think you've taken the garnish and made it the main course.
No. See, I understand what you're saying there. I don't think that, though. I genuinely think that Peter Jackson wanted to make, I'm not saying that this movie is just outright a love story. It's obviously a splatter movie and everything like that. But I think the reason that that's all there is because it is, as you were saying before, right? This is him saying, I can make a real movie about characters that you actually care about, and although I've got all this other spectacular stuff going on, in the end, it's these two characters kind of walking off into the sunset together. And there's like something here that you can, because like I remembered that. I remember the name Paquita, has always kind of lodged in my brain. It's a great name.
He does say it about 15,000.
Sure it does. But there is like it's a through line. It is a core to this story that is not about just spectacle and splatter and everything else. It's got all that. Tons and tons and tons of that. But
I mean, it definitely is the through line. It is like the frame in which this movie is sort of flying on or being built on. But I mean, I guess for me, I will say that it's going to sound, I guess, mean. I don't care what happens to Paquita or to Lionel, really, other than I just kind of want to see what happens to them, because so much crazy stuff has happened. But I'm not like, I just really wish these two kids would just figure it out and get together. Like that's not how I'm feeling.
Oh, so yeah, I 100% do. I think I mean, because it didn't need that, right? I mean, the grandfather of this
to be a movie, it needs to have something.
No. But zombie movies always have a point. They're always trying to say something. Night of the Living Dead, the progenitor of this genre is, there's this societal thing that's happening in that movie,
but I mean,
right?
Romero's a whole other ball of wax. I mean, I think this movie, I think before it's anything, is a movie that's, for the most part, I think trying to make you laugh. I think that is really what he's trying to do, and he's trying to do the thing which he said in the Meet the Feebles documentary, which is things get so outrageous you can't help but laugh, right? That's like what he's really trying to do here. I think he's trying to make a comedy that happens to also be a horror movie, right? And I think,
but if that's the case, then why not? I mean, just splatter everybody then, like you don't need to have that happy ending. You don't need to sort of end this with this romance, I
think he does. Well, no, because I don't think that, I'm not saying that Jackson and Walsh and Sinclair don't want you to care about those two people. I'm just saying, like, I don't think it's particularly successful in the fact that, like, Lionel is such an a over the top character in his impishness, in his feebleness, in his in his sort of like, I'm so scared of my mom, like, so, stuff, whatever. It's to the point where it's kind of cartoony, I think on purpose in many ways, but it's like, and, Paquita is a little bit more centered, but she also has like a very specific thing about her. I mean, she's Spanish, obviously. I don't, and I could be wrong about this, so I don't want to. I'm not a cultural expert, but I don't know that tarot is like a huge part of Spanish culture.
I was wondering about that too. Yeah, I thought that was more of like a gypsy thing.
Yeah, I mean, like a Romani thing. That's what I thought. Is like she Romani. I don't know, whatever. But, so.
Well, she's meant to be Spanish, though, right?
She's definitely meant to be Spanish. Absolutely.
Okay, I thought so.
Absolutely, yes. I'm saying,
even her dad kind of seems like not Spanish.
He doesn't. No, and neither does the grandmother. Really, she doesn't seem Spanish either. But Paquita's definitely Spanish.
Maybe she's adopted.
Absolutely, maybe. I don't know.
Well, look, we can have these conversations about this movie, and that tells me there's more going on. Like, I really do. I mean that. I am not being facetious. I do think this is,
I know you're not being facetious.
At its heart, it is in some sense a romantic comedy, and I love that about it.
I mean, yes, I'm not saying, I shouldn't say that. I don't disagree with you that I think it has romantic comedy elements to it. It absolutely does. It's crazy.
Even got kind of the beats structurally of a romantic comedy.
Absolutely
the way
does,
these characters are kind of pushed together and then forced apart. It's got kind of the meet cute thing, and again, of course it's a zombie movie. Of course it's a horror movie, and it is a comedy, that is doing that as well. But I don't know. I do. And of course it's very heightened, very over the top, but I like that. I find them more believable than the characters in most American romantic comedies. So
that's also an insane thing to say, but I think the heightenedness of it is the thing that I think is what gives the movie its energy, right? But it's the thing that makes these people not real people to me, right? They are just sort of like a bunch of characteristics like thrown into a person and then just like turned to 11, right? I mean, because if you want to if I want to give you an example of something that I think works in this way, like Shaun of the Dead is something that I think really works in the way you're talking about, right? Which is, it is a comedy, it is a romantic comedy, it's also a zombie movie, but all the people are obviously, the comedy is character comedy. So it's a lot more like you get to know these people, you get to care about these people, et cetera, et cetera. And it's clear that everyone involved in that movie really wants that to be like a real part of that movie and really sell it in a big way. And I think
in some ways, Shaun of the Dead is kind of a better version of this.
In some ways it is. Yeah, absolutely. And I just think this movie, I just think that Jackson, at this point in his career, I think this starts to change very, very quickly. I think cares about the story meaning something and having characters, but doesn't fully care about it yet, where it's the main focus of his attention, right? You know what I mean? I think the full focus of his attention is like, no. The 300 liters of blood is the full focus of the attention. And it's great that we've got this other thing going on because none of my movies have had that before, right? I think that's, for me, and when I watch it, that's where I'm at in his like development as a filmmaker, right?
Well, that's fair, but I do think it's important also. I mean, this is like we were talking before, like at this point, he's kind of the splatter auteur, right? Like he makes Bad Taste, which is kind of all about that. That's really all it's got going for it. Meet the Feebles is a movie made to sort of shock people. It is incredibly mean-spirited.
Mm-hmm.
And, the joke is that, like, look how gross we can be.
Mm-hmm.
This one is more extreme than either of those two in terms of blood and guts. I mean, I think it's a much nicer, in some sense, movie. I don't know if that's the right word.
It is.
But I never found myself like offended by Dead Alive. I found myself kind of cheering this one on, whereas Meet the Feebles was just like, this scene's gross. This character's gross. I don't want to see this. I don't like this. I mean, the humor in that movie is like, look at this hippo eating cake because she's fat. Ha ha. Here's some puppets fucking, that sort of stuff. Here it's, like, the childlike whimsy is sort of, in full effect here, even though it's used in service of here's a zombie baby and, blood and guts in the custard. We have to talk about that scene. I love that scene so much.
It's a great scene.
Kung Fu fighting Catholic priest, stuff like that. Yes. But, along with that, it is, this has been called the goriest movie ever made. It does some stuff that like you literally will not see in any other movie. And I think it's, the contrast between that and the romantic comedy stuff is really fun. And also, this could be too much if not for like something to care about alongside all the gross stuff.
I absolutely agree with you. I think the storyline we're talking about is absolutely essential to this movie working. No argument there at all, because without that, really, it would just be a thing where you'd be pretty much checked out in between all of the big, huge showpiece scenes, right? And you would come away being like, yeah, there's some good scenes in it, but overall it just didn't work, right? And this is a movie I think that does work, definitely. I still think like what's great about it's gonna sound odd that I say this. What's great about watching this, which is like we talked about, is sort of like the thing that puts him on the map internationally in sort of the horror circle, is that I watch this and I don't go, I don't know how it gets better than this, right? I watch this and go like, I can see how he's developing, but I can see how he can do better in some ways than this, right? This isn't a director coming out like he's not fully formed yet. Even when he's making this movie, right? He's still figuring out how to be not just an effects guy, not just a shock guy, not just a showman, but also a real like storytelling filmmaker, right?
No, and in some sense, you really can't outdo this, sort of shocks and splatter and gore. Like this movie kind of takes it to the level where it's like, where else can you go? What else can you do? You just, sophomore slump. You're just going to be kind of diminishing returns the whole time if you try to do something like this again. So it's like, get it all out of your system, get it all out in this movie. And then, the playing field's wide open there, right? Like you could make a more literate sort of horror movie. You could make something more like a King Kong type film, not exactly King Kong, but something that is more, that sort of classical adventure explorer kind of horror film or genre film. So yeah, this almost feels like him, okay, here is all that I can do in this area. I'm going to just give it to you like as much as I can now. We do see like there are little glimmers of this in the Frighteners. We see a little bit of it, like Lord of the Rings. There is a grit and a grossness to parts of it. We mentioned like with the orcs and Gollum a little bit too. There's some stuff that is a little bit reminiscent of this, but it's like that is the very toned down, very safe sort of version of what we see in this movie. But yeah, he's, it's like he's expending all of that stuff now. So it's like, I don't have to do this again. And let's see where we go from here. And but no one, like, who could predict where he would actually go from here? That's what's kind of incredible about it.
It is. It definitely is. And, I think right from the opening credits, like we get the opening scene, obviously, which is on Skull Island. And once again, New Zealand is like a cheat code for production value. Because like they're in between those like then that rocky the cliff thing, it looks like a totally different world than the it's probably an hour away from where he lives, and it looks like a completely different world. Yeah. And I think they use that in Lord of the Rings as well. We'll talk about that when we get to that movie, but with those movies. But it's sort of like this opening like classic like, oh, these people went into this area and they're taking an animal out, and the natives want to stop them, and we get right away this information that the bite is bad. We don't know why, right? But the people who are helping this one guy take the monkey away, he gets bit, and they kind of like start cutting off his limbs where he gets bit.
And then they realize scene too.
His head got scratched, so they just kill him, and then they go on.
It's his forearm. So they cut off his arm about here. Then it's on his shoulder. So it's like, we got to cut off the whole arm. Then it's his little scratch on his forehead. It's like, all right, well, we're going to decapitate him. And you see all of that in, extremely graphic detail. Yes. But it is played very comedically, very over the top. It is a nice way of kind of leading into what we're going to get later in this movie. Although I got to tell you, like much as with Meet the Feebles, the first few scenes do set the tone, I think, pretty well. And, we see some puppet sex, we see some puppet violence, puppet drug use, and that kind of stuff in Meet the Feebles, but things get so much grosser later on. And I remember watching Meet the Feebles this most recent time and thinking, okay, like this is about as extreme as it gets. And then it just ramps up and ramps up and ramps up from there. This movie does the exact same thing. Like I did not remember like all the things are like, oh, this movie's like such a gross splatter movie. And I was like, yeah, we're hacking off some limbs here and stuff. And then there's the custard scene, which is gross, but it's kind of funny, like in Bad Taste. But man, it really went to places that I forgot that it went. And and I'm saying that remembering the colon, but not a lot of the other stuff. There is did you see the scene? It was definitely a deleted scene, placed back in, where Paquita and the other lady with the glasses that she kind of teams up with toward the end there. Yeah. There's this disembodied like bottom half of zombie.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's just like crotch and legs. Yeah. And they like rip it in half like a wishbone and start beating the other zombies. They each grab a leg and start beating the other zombies.
You're going way forward. Why are you going to the end scene right now?
Well, just because like
we're in the
where else are you going to see that? Like that's where else can you go from there? Like that is the extreme, and I love it.
We're in the opening scene, so but I think what this scene does well is and I'm excited we're not going to talk about this movie compared to the last two movies we've been talking about, is just that this movie has like a structure that we can discuss and kind of break down and talk about how it sort of it informed other parts of it, which is this opening, while obviously very heightens like everything else in the movie, does set up the stakes or the fear around whatever this thing is. Because even when they're like dropping it off at the airfield or whatever, you know, the one guy is like obviously very conflicted about this monkey thing leaving. And then we get the opening credit.
Rat monkey. It doesn't look like a monkey. It looks like a rat.
It looks like a rat. The rat that came and had sex with all the monkeys, and they had a monkey babies. But the next thing we get like, first of all, we get it's just one of these things where you go, this guy just has an inability to go, no, it's okay if we just do like, we see them on the ground, and then the next thing you know, we're seeing them get stuff off a plane at the airport. No, we've got to have a model of this old airplane flying through the sky, and showing like its journey from where it started and where it's going. And it's like there's like one or two shots in it too where the model work and the perspective work is really quite amazing. Like it really, you're like, there's times you're like, no, that's a model, but then there are other shots where you're like, that looks like a real airplane, you know, like you really like. And there's sometimes where they are doing stuff where they have a model and then they also have a real, you know,
they get the
vehicle.
Landing of this same exact like passenger plane, some 50s vintage passenger plane. It looks great.
The same,
really almost
you know?
seamless.
Yeah. So I think that's really impressive, right? And then we get like a real ass opening credits sequence in the movie, right? Where we have multiple setups, where they you know, finish on characters that we are going to end up spending the whole movie with, right? There is like a intention behind these things. You know, let's show this town, let's show how it's sort of like nice and idyllic or whatever, and let's, you know, meet our female lead very, very quickly, right? And then very soon after that, our male lead will show up. And, you know, I think like, again, it's something that's done a lot in movies, but it's just, he hasn't done this yet. He hasn't done the thing where he's like, okay, well, I'm putting together these blocks in order to give you what you know as a movie, right? Like this is a movie now. Like I'm not trying to make you throw up. It's
impressive for this era of Peter Jackson. It's not impressive in the grand scheme of cinema, but it is, it's very classical, very traditional. Yeah. We are setting things up rather than just like, you know, here's a thing, check this out. Here's another thing. Here's an idea that I came up with last week. It's all pretty well structured. I agree.
Yeah. And we meet our characters, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like this and The Frighteners, I think are very similar in a lot of ways. You know, it's the limited setting and the, you know, the sort of, he seems to like these like nerdy male protagonists, which maybe is something a little bit like him. It's a little bit of an analog for Peter Jackson. And we get to sort of meet them a little bit on the way to, you know, whatever horror stuff they're involved in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this guy is like, ultra soy boy, mama's boy. Lionel is like, you know, very sweet, very kind of unassuming guy. You know, Paquita initially is interested in this like pharmacist or whatever he is. But you know, her grandmother reads her tarot and tells her like, oh no, you're gonna meet one guy, he's gonna be your love forever, and he's gonna have this shape or whatever, you know, on him or whatever. And Lionel walks in immediately, and she immediately is like, okay, I guess because my grandmother told me on the tarot cards that I would love this guy, I'm going to love him, you know? So that's just kind of
lots of fun little stuff here too. So the tarot card that is supposed to represent him is the Black Knight.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure is an actual, there's two that they kind of made up for the movie, but then he goes into the store, she works in a grocery store, and he picks up a piece of Black Knight licorice.
Yeah.
And that's when she kind of locks eyes with him. And, you know, just these cute little sort of visual gags that he's doing a lot here, you know, just fun sort of comedy stuff on the way to, you know, as where this movie actually goes.
I mean, this movie is Looney Tunes all over the place. When it's being gross or when it's just being sort of normal, it is constantly like visual sight gags and physical comedy just all over the place, right? That's sort of the whole movie's vibe and thing going on. You know, we then meet, you know, Lionel's mom, who's a real treat of a woman for sure. She's really stressed about this, like, what are they like?
Well, Wellington Ladies Society or something like that.
What it was. Yeah, like basically the Rotary Club, basically. And she's going to be like a big part of like the big event they're putting on and everything, and they're supposed to come over, and she kind of like forbids him from seeing Paquita, but he goes to the zoo with her anyway. Oh, so here, like we have Chekhov's lawnmower. He sets up the lawnmower right away, and we get that cool shot that's underneath the lawnmower.
Yeah, right. Where the blades are sort of spinning right above the camera there.
Yeah.
So they must have had it's kind of a trick shot. Very
like
cool.
It dug a hole probably
Yep.
or something and put a glass down. But it's like one of those things where it's like, it's a high effort shot for
Yep.
something that lasts like 2 seconds, that you don't really need, right? You could just show him pushing the lawnmower. But these are the things that make where you can see directors who have a specialness to them, right? Where they're not willing to just settle for like the typical shots where they're like, no, I'm going to do this high difficulty shot. And I'm sure it was a pain in the ass, and I'm sure it took longer than every other setup of that day to do it, but it's a cool shot, right?
Yeah, and compared to what we see later, it's not that complicated and not that big of a deal.
No, but I'm sure those guys are like, Peter, you know what's coming? Can we just...
We know how lawnmowers work and what they look like from underneath. Yeah. But
people are
like,
oh,
really
there's
like
a blade on the bottom of the lawnmower.
Then it spins.
Yeah, I never would have guessed. So
really fun. I mean, we are playing with stereotypes, archetypes here, but like his mother is kind of that quintessential Oedipal domineering mother. Mm-hmm. She's very what's her name? Norman Bates' mom, who we meet at the end of the movie, like his actual mom. Does she have a name?
No, but that's not his actual mom. That's not his actual mom. That was like the woman that his dad was having an affair with.
But what I'm saying is, it's that relationship, right? It's that, it's that Oedipal relationship, the domineering mother that won't let you see other women, gets jealous, that sort of psychological thing that this movie does.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it takes literally 30 seconds to establish everything we need to know about it, because we have seen it before.
Yeah.
But it kind of shorthands that in a very convenient way. She makes him, he's bringing something back to her from the grocery store, and it's like, go do your chores because the women from the Ladies Society are coming over. This very sitcom-y setup, which leads to one of my favorite scenes in the movie later on.
Yeah.
But, we kind of get what the conflict of this is right away before we even know really what the monkey is going to do or what it's capable of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we get pretty soon after that, too.
We do. So she like forbids him from going out with Paquita, like I said, and then we go to the zoo anyway, and she sort of like follows them and is spying on them. This is where we see the rat monkey, actually, the thing that was in the cage. And Nick and I was like, if I was this zoo, I probably wouldn't put this monkey that's killing other monkeys like in a cage that he can easily reach out.
I forgot.
People.
So I've probably remembered more of the movie than you did, but I thought there was more complication with how the rat monkey actually bit his mother and started this whole chain of events. But no, that she's just at the zoo. She's spying on him because he's on a date and, can't do that. Right. Yeah. And it's just there in a cage on display, bites another monkey. And then, she gets attacked there. And I don't know. They don't seem nearly concerned. Like, who feeds that thing?
I don't know. And she squishes the monkey's head with her shoe.
Love that
and
shot.
Kills the monkey, the rat monkey. And
wonderful stop motion. Yeah. I mean, it's not the best looking thing I've ever seen, but it's, very distinctive, very much, very Harryhausen-esque. He loves Harryhausen. And we don't see a lot of that in this movie, but we definitely get that, that becomes, it's already at this point, right? Like a Peter Jackson trademark, stop motion puppetry and stuff like that. And
absolutely.
We get little nod to that here.
Yeah. She gets bit. He has to bring her home and kind of nurse. Everything seems like it's going to be okay. And then Paquita kind of sneaks over, and we get this. Oh, I'll say this. One of these things I feel like is a thing that where you can see he hasn't developed all his like instincts yet. Is there's a moment when the rat monkey kills the other monkey and like they take the arm out, the weird zookeeper like takes the arm out, and like some of the blood gets in like Paquita's shoes or whatever. And he like focuses on it for like a shot. And when a filmmaker does that, you're like, okay, this is obvious. This is going to mean something, right? Like I thought the dog was going to eat her shoes or something and then turn into like a zombie dog, but it's like not a thing that ever comes up again, right? Even in this long cut. So it's one thing where it's like, you're probably just like, oh, it's like kind of gross that the blood goes in her shoes, so I'm just going to focus on it. I'm just going to show it, so you can see like, oh, it's gross. But, it sends like the language of movies is if a director focuses on something like that, you're like, it's got to mean something, right? And he just hasn't. I feel like in his next movie or in a couple movies, he wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah. It's Chekhov's blood-filled shoe.
Exactly. we already Chekhov's lawnmower, so I'm thinking there's got to be Chekhov's bloody shoe, and it's not going to happen. But Paquita comes over, and we get this really good, again, just stylish, like, montage of the grandmother, like, doing the tarot cards, the mom sort of, you know, getting sicker and sicker and her wound exploding or whatever, and then Paquita and Lionel sort of, you know, consummating their relationship, all, you know, kind of intercut and almost like layered over one another. And again, it's one thing where like this guy just has style as a filmmaker, and he just is like, this could have been a much different scene. It could have been straight cuts from one to the other or whatever, but it's a really, I think, stylish montage that he puts together there. And then really after that, we kind of just, we're kind of kicking it off, right? So the next scene is, she's really doesn't look good, right? She's really bad off when he goes in to see her, but the people from the club have come, so she's got to get ready to go. And she like shaves off part of her face when she's trying to like put makeup on, and he like glues her face back together. Like, and also this great, it's like Looney Tunes shit, right? It's like really, it's funny, it's engaging.
It is gory.
It's gory. Oh yeah, it's for sure
painful
gory
to look at. Sure,
yeah.
This latex, you know, a triangle of latex peeling back from her face with blood underneath.
Yeah,
and he like puts makeup on. It actually ended up looking pretty good. He covers it up pretty well. But yeah, then you get that like really fun sort of stereotypical sitcom scene where this lady, Mrs. What's her name, Mrs. Abernathy or something like that.
I don't remember.
Mrs.
My mother says, man, she goes,
the Mathesons. Yeah, it's and her husband comes over, and he's just kind of there to, you know, eat food,
oblivious.
Yeah, so Lionel prepares them a meal, and they're all sitting around the dinner table, and his mom is looking grosser and grosser and grosser. She's trying to cover up the fact that she's very sick, obviously. And we get just all these sort of fun moments here. I love this bit, the custard thing. So he's serving them dinner. They're getting, the lady, Mrs. Matheson, is starting to see that this woman whose house she's at is really not well, and she wants to get out of there as soon as possible. But Mr. Matheson is just there for a good meal. He's really into custard, and so Lionel puts out the custard in front of them. Her, you know, another Peter Jackson trademark is these exploding pustules on people's bodies. And so that happens with her, and this like splatter of blood lands in his custard, and he takes a huge bite of it, much like in Bad Taste, very much like in, you know, with Harry the Rabbit and Meet the Feebles. Yeah. That sort of, you're eating someone's puke or pus or something like that. But this guy, we don't see much of him later in the movie, but something about this performance, this moment, like the joy he gets from eating this custard. I've always, I don't know why, since I was a little kid, I think the word custard is really funny for some reason. And it gets said a lot in this scene.
Yes, it does.
And he's just like having this orgasmic experience of eating this custard. And it's so gross. Just, I mean, I don't know. I don't like white gloppy food anyway, but
custard's delicious though.
Well, I'm sure it is. But
it's
also
so
a funny
good.
word.
It's so good. He just knows how to make your stomach turn. Like
he
the
does
gloppiness in the gloppiness. Like it's very funny and good and like, you know, but it has that Bad Taste, like puke scene vibe where you're just like, for some reason, there's all this crazy gross stuff that happens in this movie. This was the scene where I was like, God, it's so gross that he's doing this. But you know, I love like comedy of manners stuff. And so the way this sort of goes into it, which is like, you know, he's like, okay, like dinner's over or whatever, lunch is over or whatever. And, you know, the woman says like, okay, we're going to go. And the guy's like, no pudding? Like how, this is just not how we do things here. And that's what leads to this scene. Right. And like, I love that the woman sees it all. Right, including the mom eating her own ear when her ear drops into her custard.
Drops into the custard, yeah. And she just like takes a spoonful of it. Yep.
Yeah. Really, really, really good. And that scene's great. And then, you know, obviously, you know, Paquita coming over then and the dog running upstairs. And then I totally forgot about this, by the way. I totally forgot about this. The size of that dog shank that he pulls out of her mouth is crazy. It's so long, and like her just screaming, you know, she ate my dog or
Your
whatever.
mother ate my dog.
My dog, yeah. And then he's like, not all of it. And then
she's pulling. I think it's a tail. I think she's just pulling this
tail.
Long tail out of her mouth. Yeah, for like 5 minutes. It's really great.
And then you do that. You know, it's all been in close up when he goes in there, and then like they do like that Arrested Development sort of like cut to the wide. and the whole bed is just covered in like guts and dog stuff. Which is great, really funny, really effective.
And I'm one of those people that hates to see a dog killed in a movie, but if you're gonna do it, I don't mind it this way. Make it funny, make it over the top, make it gross, and
yeah.
I never thought that dog. I forgot about this scene too, but I never thought that dog was gonna make it.
Yeah, and I mean, also, it's one of those things where you don't actually see the dog die, so I think you don't even hear like a yelp or anything, right? It's just sort of like then becomes a prop, so it doesn't really bother me as much as like seeing if I had to watch that dog get eaten, it definitely would have bothered me for sure. And then we get Lionel goes to this like Nazi veterinarian, I guess, who definitely is he's definitely a Nazi because he's like, my people were persecuted, and he looks like a cartoon Nazi. And then gets this tranquilizer stuff. And then there's like he gives it to her, but there's also this trolley accident where he like, again, we get the model trolley and then we get a real trolley. And she gets hit by this trolley and basically like thrown into the grocery store, basically. Which I think is a really fun scene. And then basically she's like, well, she has to kind of be like, well, she's dead, basically, because there's nothing else. Everyone in the whole town is like, well, we just saw someone get hit by a trolley and she looks like death, so she must be dead. And we get that. And the next is like the funeral scene, and we get a Peter Jackson cameo as the
Undertaker's kind of assistant,
the mortuary assistant, which is great. And he looks just like he looks in Bad Taste, basically. He has that same exact look going on, and he's a big weirdo, just like in that. We meet a few colorful characters in this whole like
Uncle Les,
Uncle Les, who is I feel like is like comedy version of Dennis Hopper and Blue Velvet, because he's always like huffing that pipe the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's just a perv and gross all around. Like one of those characters was just like,
he reminds me of you ever see Hardware, the Richard Stanley movie? William Hootkins plays a character that's just like that in that movie. And he gets it pretty good from the robot in the end.
Yeah, but I think like the good performance, a really good performance.
So funny. Yeah, he's just gross. He's like kind of like a Randy Quaid type guy.
Yes, he is. New Zealand Randy Quaid.
Yeah, what a claim to fame. Yeah, so he immediately starts perving on Paquita. Also, has designs on inheriting the home. They have like one of the nicest houses in town. Lionel and his mother. And so, him being the brother, he thinks he's owed that. And it's one of, classic sort of Agatha Christie stuff there, the intrigue over the house.
That subplot I could have done without, because I'm just like, because I know it's not going anywhere. I'm like, this is not the going concern of this movie, is who gets to inherit this house.
I just think he needs to be as much of a villain as possible so that like what happens with him later can be kind of justified. So I don't mind it, but it's unnecessary.
Yeah, it's unnecessary plot line. I mean, him mentioning it is fine, but they do spend probably about 10 minutes of the movie sort of like addressing the situation. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't need the 10 minutes. We
get a sense of who Uncle Les is pretty much right away.
Yeah.
And we know he's not a sympathetic character.
And we go to the graveyard because he's like, oh, I gotta go to the graveyard and dig up my mom and get rid of her because she's gonna be like a zombie person, because I know she's a zombie at this point. And here we get to meet. This is where I realized it was in the 50s. Even before I didn't even realize it was in the 50s before this, when it was like, it gave her like lifespan. And it was like 1957 was when she died. But
it says it in the beginning of the movie.
I'm sure it does. This is, when we go through any movie we go through, I'm terrible at like remembering when they put a date on the screen or something, remembering how it relates to, like when they put another date up on the screen, I'm always like, I don't remember what the other date was. For some reason, it just does not go into my brain.
Yeah, the other thing with this that makes it a little bit, I mean, the story is continuous, right? But we get the title at the beginning, it says Skull Island 1957.
Yeah.
And then we get the opening credits, and then we're in New Zealand. We see, like, it seems like there could be more of a time jump there.
Yeah, exactly. I just assumed that they found this monkey however long ago, and then whatever, I wasn't even thinking like this movie is going to be set in the 50s. So because I just didn't remember that at all. And we meet Jed Brophy's character Void in this scene, who is one of the biggest characters in the movie, obviously.
Yeah.
And will go on to be a Peter Jackson staple for the rest of his career after this. He has some of the best gags in the whole movie. The way that he dies for the first time here is great. like the mom pulling him down and then just like the blood spurting out like as he's getting pulled
Oh,
into
well,
the
he
grave.
goes to piss on her grave.
Yeah.
And she grabbed. We don't see that. Like, I admire the restraint in some parts of this movie, right? If this were Meet the Feebles, you would see it hanging down and her reach up and grab it. Here, it's like all shot waist up. You know exactly what's happening. That's funny. Seeing his dick is not funny.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Danny McBride.
Yeah, you get it, right? You get what's happening to him, the blood and everything. And I will say too, we see the mom's, face after this or whatever, and like the makeup effects, how they've been like the depreciation of her state or whatever are really great. Like and it's only gonna get better by the end. Like her makeup is amazing, but it's like, and then we get obviously one of the most famous lines, from the movie. I kick ass for the Lord.
The priest from the funeral scene. We like literally, I remembered him being like such a more important character, but no, we meet him in the funeral scene.
Yeah.
He has this incredible fight scene with these, they're 80s punk rockers by way of 50s greaser guys.
Yes.
Which I like a lot. It's kind of the same aesthetic.
Yeah.
They got the ducktail haircuts and stuff like that.
They're like a gang from a Frank Miller comic book is like kind of what they're like, Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And he just kung fu fights them. We don't know where he got his training from, but when there's evil to be, like, he seems to have been preparing for something like this for quite a while.
Yeah, and this is one of those scenes where it's just like a cascading set of bits, right, that kind of come together. So there's like this kung fu scene with the priest, and he decapitates one of the greasers or whatever, and the greaser's head goes flying up into the air, but then it comes back down and lands on his shoulder and bites him on the shoulder, in that section. And that's just like, it's such crazy choreography to be happening all, together in this moment. I should mention, we didn't even talk about when the mom kills the Nurse
McTavish. Yeah.
Which I was like, that was a moment where I was like, holy shit, I definitely did not remember this at all, because her head bends fully.
Yes. And then kind of snaps forward. Like she's got this hinge almost. There's this great moment later. We'll talk about it, where he's feeding his pet zombies that he ends up with Lionel. And
that's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Okay. Yeah, I like that too.
Is that scene.
Yep.
But, and there's a scene where like, when she first comes back to life, right after she dies, and he's trying to keep it from Paquita what's happening. Like when he throws like the wall ornament at her head and it makes her head go flying back again, all of this stuff. Gets him into the basement or whatever. But we've got this like, so the priest gets bitten, so he becomes a zombie. So we basically cut to, he's got the Nurse, his mom, the priest, and Void all around his kitchen table, and he's trying to feed them, right? Because he's trying to give them the tranquilizer so they won't go out and like, so they'll stay docile, right? He's trying to keep them docile so they don't want to bite other people, right? That's kind of his whole deal with this, right? Because he doesn't want to kill his mom because he loves his mom or whatever, and then he really doesn't know what to do otherwise. But there's like, everyone has different sort of like ailments that have happened to them in the way that they've died.
And one of them is pregnant.
Yes.
Which is fun.
So, he like has to like pour the scrambled eggs down like the throat hole of the Nurse,
It's such a gross shot. I mean, I think it outdoes the custard scene already. We're just getting started here. But yeah, when her neck cavity opens up and you just like see this again gloppy stuff going into this like bloody slit in her neck. Disgusting, but hilarious. Again, I'm laughing all the way through this in ways that like Meet the Feebles was just like, I was so done with it so quickly. And this is like, now give me more, Peter Jackson. Yeah. I want to see, like, show me where we can go with this.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not mean-spirited, right?
No,
like
it's not.
All of this stuff, it's silly, it's cartoonish, it's sitcomish. It's also, Lionel is a sweet character. He's like trying to take care of these, they're like rambunctious children or, misbehaving animals or something like that. Like, it's not, like he doesn't really have any ill will toward them, even his mother, and that's what kind of makes this fun. Even the stuff with the baby later on is like, I don't like in Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, there's a similar scene with a pregnant person who gets bit by a zombie, has a zombie baby. I found that kind of gross and offensive there. Here I find it hilarious. I love the baby. I can't.
Well, they're
wait to talk
played for
about the
very different reactions.
I know they are, but it is, ultimately, right? Like I've seen so many movies where they like that is the gag, right? Like, isn't it gross how babies are born? And like, let's do something with the umbilical cord. We'll swing it around. Tom Green's Freddy Got Fingered did that gag.
Man, you're really pulling out the big guns, huh?
Well, yeah. But that's like something I never want to see in a movie. And in this movie, I'm just like, this is great. Give me more.
Yeah. Also, doesn't hurt it that the baby is like looks like a doll that is
Sure.
being animated. It doesn't look like a real like baby.
Yeah.
Because it comes out of the womb at like a 9-month-old, basically in its function. If not older than that, but I would say
the zombie disease from the Sumatran rat monkey sped up its growth process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then the nurse and the priest are having zombie sex with each other.
Oh yeah, they start going at it like right, which is also really funny, right? I guess it's sort of blasphemous, the priest having sex with like a lot of fun also.
Yeah, and
puppet
then
sex I don't like. Zombie sex I think is really funny.
The void sticks like the spoon through the back of his skull when he's trying to eat the eggs, and then the mom is like grabbing the eggs from the spoon that's gone through his head and eating them, and Void is getting angry that she's eating his eggs or whatever. All of this stuff, right? All this stuff is really good and funny, I think, and really well done. The uncle shows up and he thinks he's watching like his dad's old sex movies or whatever, which one of them is a donkey or something, and he really wants to come in and watch him with him, so that's all very weird. And the scene ends with, he comes in and he tries to pull apart the priest and the nurse, and she like basically bites off the priest's mouth, basically, so he's just like skull teeth that are showing on his face the rest of the time, which is really fun. And then this baby gets born, and he takes the baby to the park. In theory, this scene is fun. There's a bunch of fun gags, but at this point, and I know this makes no sense for me to say something like this, considering what the rest of this movie is, but my brain just couldn't help it. I was like, what sense does it make that he took the zombie baby to the park in a bassinet? I don't understand.
Yeah, he's pushing it in a pram, and because Peter Jackson, again, he had a little money left over, and he does like to come up with stuff and then just go shoot it. And this is like as Looney Tunes as the movie gets, I think. I mean, it's very, very silly, kind of cute in a way, also.
Yeah, I mean, the scene is
the other
fun.
kids' reactions to it and that kind of stuff.
But definitely a thing where I'm like, this scene definitely could have been snipped out of the movie, and I don't think you really would have missed it. That was the only time where I was like, okay, this is fun, but like it kind of stops the momentum of the movie. You can feel that it was not originally part of the movie.
Yeah, it feels like a short film, in the middle of zombie baby. And,
exactly.
It's once it's over, it's really the baby doesn't do much aside from in this scene.
No,
we get the birth scene.
Don't you dare say that, because there is something that happens in the final scene with the baby that is insane.
Well, that's great. Yeah, but otherwise, it's not a major player in the story the way any of the other zombies are.
No, absolutely not. But I'm sure he's like, man, we have this great puppet and this great thing, and I'm going to do more with it. I'm sure that's what it was.
I think it's $45,000 well spent.
Yeah, I'm sure. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not my money.
No, it's the New Zealand Film Commission's money.
And then after this, we're basically, I mean, we've got a couple little scenes where like, Paquita's mad at him because Lionel is kind of, for obvious reasons that we know, not been spending time with her, but keeping her away. She ends up kind of connecting with this pharmacist that she wanted at the beginning, and he sort of like pushes Lionel away and tells him he'll kick his ass if he shows up again. The uncle discovers the zombies in the basement, but just thinks, I think they're just corpses, I guess, and not zombies. I don't know exactly how or why.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure either.
But he basically says like, well, unless you give me the house and the money or whatever, I'm going to tell everybody about it. And so Lionel agrees to give him the house or whatever. Again, this part where I'm like, I guess the only reason this exists is so we have the party happen, because that's the uncle is the one who throws the party, right? Uncle's like, my nephew has 5 corpses in the basement. Time to throw a party.
Right away. Yeah.
Right away. Not even
before any
questions.
of the papers are signed or anything.
Yeah. Wouldn't you be nervous about what your nephew was doing or whatever? I would be like,
well, that's it, right? I mean, it's implied that he thinks Lionel murdered them all and is doing stuff to the corpses.
Whatever. But he's like, as long as you give me money, I don't care. I'll look the other way. And then we're basically, at this point, we're into Paquita shows up And then we're kind of just into the crazy last 30-40 minutes of this movie, which is just this insane set of cascading, growing gore, that just we and I'll say, like, what this scene does, I still think, as great as this scene is, probably it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes too long. Like, it's somewhere you could some of the stuff we could pare down.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I think that there is so much ingenuity and so much creativity in what they're doing, because there are really no two set pieces, moments that are the same, right?
No, there's no two
continually
kills, no
changes.
two dismemberments.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this movie is really all about, right? Yeah. Well, it's a romantic comedy too, but
yeah.
That stuff is.
Yeah, there you go, Nick. You stumbled. The wall fell down.
Well, I mean, when we get to this point, right? Yeah, you're right. Like we're seeing kind of just, and he's cross-cutting again here, right? Like Lionel and Paquita are kind of separated through a lot of this. As I was saying before, Paquita kind of teams up with one of the nicer friends of Uncle Les. Like, they're all like horrible, they're just like these degenerates that he has over for this house party at his new house, which apparently is his house now. And we don't mind seeing any of them get killed, but there's this one lady who's kind of nice, the sort of librarian looking one with the black glasses,
the one who basically makes it to almost the end, basically.
And her and Paquita kind of do this girl power thing versus it's like, you need a horde, right? This is it's a small town. There's not a lot of people in it, so we got to set this all in this one place because we don't have the budget to do like a whole full-on Raccoon City invasion sort of thing. So let's just get everybody into this one house, and then we're in this room, we're in that room, we're kind of cutting all over the place. It moves really, really. I agree with you that it's a little bit overlong.
Yeah.
But, and in some sense, you showed up for this kind of stuff, and he just wants to make sure you get your money's worth. And
Absolutely.
I will say, up to this point, right, like if this movie kind of just ended here with like some kind of short climactic scene, I still think this would be a really fun movie. It's got some great gore effects. It's got fun characters. It's got like really good, funny moments. It's got a lot of visual ingenuity and stuff like that. But it ramps up not only the excessiveness of the gore and everything else, but also just it's this really kinetic sort of scene. Like, it never stops moving. We're kind of like paying off all these subplots, or paying off all these things that we saw earlier. Uncle Les finally gets his comeuppance here, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
That bit with his he gets his Mortal Kombat style, head and spine ripped out, and then that gets swung around Paquita's head and splattered against the wall. Like, all of that stuff is great. And yes, it's overlong, and pacing wise, it's not great, but I'm not going to say I wanted less of it.
No. I think that, and I will say this, I think that he does a very good job as the scene at growing the scene to like a fever pitch point, and because it does start smaller, right? It starts smaller and gets progressively bigger as more and more people who die become zombies. The scene grows and grows and grows, and so you got a ton going on. I should say it starts with, basically Paquita's like realizes what's going on and is like, you got to kill them. Like, she's not your mom anymore. Well, right.
Yeah.
And so he tries to kill him with, a bottle, like cartoonly labeled poison. But then when he flips it around, it's actually a stimulant.
Mm-hmm.
So
it makes super zombies.
Makes super zombies who just want to kill everything, right? And it's so funny how like Void kind of becomes like almost the final boss of the whole situation for the most part. But we then have like there's like three distinct things going on at once. Much like we talk about, Bad Taste, he's already kind of starting this in his first movie. He's really kind of honed it here a lot more, which we got Lionel, we got Paquita and the other woman, and then we actually do follow the uncle for some of it as well. Mm-hmm. He's got his own thing going on, right?
Well, he starts kind of kicking ass for a while there.
He does,
he becomes somewhat of a heroic character, like defeating his former friends who are now all zombies. Yeah, and it's it's not only that they're cross-cutting between these three characters, but also he kind of knows when to do it, right? Like there's a sense of like, we've seen enough of this, let's go on to the next thing, where you're still kind of thinking about what's happening to this character here. But that does show, I think, a lot of growth for him as a filmmaker. Like in Bad Taste, the cross-cutting seems a little bit arbitrary, where it's like, oh, we haven't seen these guys in a while, let's check in with them. Whereas here it's like, okay, this scene is kind of intensified, reached that fever pitch that you were saying. Now we go back to this other thing because that was kind of left in the middle of something. There is a sense that there is some thought put into the editing there that makes this I think just a lot of fun and really crazy. You know, this is, it's not only a romantic comedy, it's like a French farce in some way, right? It's like a lot of running around and, you know, all these like crazy things happening like all at once. And he has a really good sense of that. Like Peter, I almost called him Peter Griffin. My God, Peter Jackson is a real, he's a classicist in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
he's really grown up on, you know, I'm sure like the silent comedies and that stuff. And, you know, as we mentioned, the Harryhausen movies, and like, he knows what movies are like and what movies do. And it's not like him just like always reinventing the wheel. It's like, this is a thing that works, right? I'm sure he loves, I've never heard him talk about it, but I'm sure he loves Warner Brother cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Condoms full of blood. Effects done very, very well, I think.
I mean, there are some really, really high level,
well, sure,
like puppetry going on in
but
some of
interspersed
these
with some stuff that, like, you know, you and I could do in our backyards tomorrow. If we
yeah, and it's so funny you say that, because I was watching this and like many years ago, but this guy I worked with, he loved like practical blood and splatter effects, and he used to do like these movie film races where you get like a topic and like a prop you have to use, and you get 48 hours to make it. And I used to work with him on those a lot. I used to like help them out, and he was so good at like doing these crazy gore effects. And he obviously very, very inspired by this movie. And then me and some of my friends would do like these Halloween movies. And he started helping us with the effects for those. He would just come and do effects, and we would just come up with kill scenes. Like, you know, I'd be like, I kind of want it to be this, and he'd like figure it out, you know. And like there was just some crazy stuff, right, that we would do, and it reminds me of something that happens in this movie especially. But like this whole thing really kicks off with a guy ripping the rib cage clear out of another person's chest, like whole.
Oh, I love this bit. Yeah, the rib cage gets ripped out, and then you see his hands. He's like reaching for it because he's still alive, and he's trying to like pull it down and back in. Again, really, really clever and super gross, but not mean-spirited. Really funny. Really slapsticky. I remembered this, and again, it had been a while since I'd seen it. Like, I remembered it being a little bit less goofy, and this time it's like, no, they're dialing the goofy up to 11.
Oh yeah, it's very goofy. I mean, there's a lot of these first kills are like you said, there are a lot of people getting things ripped off or ripped out and then still being alive and being like, oh my god, like you ripped out my heart. Or like somebody gets like punched through the back of their throat. This woman gets punched through the back of her throat. This guy's like, all the skin comes off both of his legs, and he's got just like skeleton legs.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, kind of flopping around.
Yeah. Like, that's awesome.
I love the ribcage thing. I forgot about it. I'm glad you mentioned it because I love that bit. It's just one of those things, you know, it's really funny. You've never seen it before, but like when you see the hands come up and grab it and try to pull it back and like stick it back in. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And then there's a part where Lionel's trying to run away, and he's like, there's so much blood on the floor that he's just like running in place on the thing, and I'm like, this is a cartoon, like, and that's
slipping in the blood.
Yeah, not even, the funny part is he never even like falls down. He's just is running as fast as he can, but can't move because he can't get any grip on the floor. Right. For all of this, one of the things that bothered me the most was when the uncle's in that shed, and he starts pulling the teeth out of that one zombie.
Yeah.
I was like, did there have to be teeth stuff in this movie? I mean, this is also where, before that is when the guy's skin off his face gets ripped off. And that's the poster image, obviously, is that image of the sort of skinless face person.
Very Hellraiser.
Very Hellraiser. The light bulb through the back of the head.
Oh, that's
on that
great.
woman.
Yeah.
So
you know what's
good.
great about that is this, she's in the background of so many shots, and that had to be kind of a tough thing to pull off. And it's like, no, we need to show you she's still there, and she's just like, she's not even doing anything. She's pinned to the wall. But it's like, we're gonna have this fight scene right in front of her with her in the background. Like, he's very good, even here with, planes of action, and
Yeah.
there's always like something to look at in the frame. Nothing is ever just like, all right, we're going to stage this fight scene in the kitchen. It's like, nope, we are going to have this fight scene in the kitchen with this zombie sort of writhing in the background with her glowing head, screaming at the top of her lungs. Like, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Just like I said, very zany, very high energy.
Yeah, and using it in ways that, like, they'd use the blender and the light would go off and then it would, like, or get dim and then it would pop back on, and there was, like, stuff with the wiring in the house and how it would get affected. It was just a continuous sort of, a running gag throughout this part of the movie. Yeah, really like that stuff a lot. Lionel kind of has a big fight with Void in that bathroom, and half of him is in the toilet, the other half of his legs are walking towards him. He's like, intestines and anus are like on the ground. It farts at one point while it's trying to grab him while he's climbing into the attic.
Because of course it does.
Of course it does. And this is, again, another one of these weird things, right, where he finds this trunk with a skeleton in it and all these pictures of his dad with this woman who's not his mom. And I'm like, okay, we are going into like some sort of storyline that, like, we are 10 minutes away from the end of this movie at this point, And we do that, and then the guts are inside the trunk or whatever. Like the Void guts are in there. They got in there somehow, and they kind of jump out at him and are attacking him, and he kind of falls through the roof. They go up his pants at one point, and then he falls through the roof, and he's like suspended above.
Oh, that scene's great too.
Yeah,
see, there's so much here. I'm like forgetting all kinds. I've took notes, like,
And again, that's one of these things where high level of difficulty, right? You've got a real actor hanging from the ceiling, with a ton of extras and a ton of, gore and blood and all of this stuff all around. It's not easy stuff to do. And again, he has an ambition that's so far above. And that's one of the things where, even though obviously this is a crazy splattery movie with, with over the top characters and it's kind of insane, there is something about it where you can tell that he's destined to do really big movies, right? Sure. Because he just has this ambition where he's like, I want this to be bigger. I want it to be more. He's not a guy who's like, I'm really trying to make like elevated, like horror here. He just loves big, crazy stuff, and he really wants to show it to as many people as possible.
Well, he's like, I mean, it's all taking place mostly in the house, but he's like packing the frame with people. There's just bodies everywhere, live, dead, whatever. You know, that, I mean, it's a lot of background action, right? That is hard to do. It's hard to do in a movie that is not this kind of, high energy, heightened craziness. It's hard to do, just a street scene where there's extras talking in the background and something like that. But like here, they're all zombies. They're all trying to kill him. Everyone's just kind of like, it's just like complete chaos, and it's beautiful. It's just like really, really well directed, really well done, really just kind of adds to the comedy and the tension and everything else. I mean, you could make this a much smaller movie on a smaller budget where there's like a few zombies in the house and like, here's a gag and here's another gag. And, he's very good at kind of developing these action scenes, but it's like, let's do that. And also let's just surround, everything with just like, it's almost like endless waves of zombies here, like video game style. Long before they actually did that in video games. And he's really also impressive. Swinging
back and forth, but he's not just submitted to one place. He swings multiple times in multiple places. There's also, we should say, that when he's hanging upside down, there's a stop motion like puppet of a intestine climbing down the string at him, and again, this is again with all this big stuff going on, he never forgets about little fun details or whatever. I love that Paquita gets bit, but it's by a zombie who has dentures, so it doesn't count, But I've never, not even to this day, with all the zombie shit I've seen in my life, have ever seen that ever done ever again. You know, where it's like, you realize the teeth are attached to me because they're not real teeth, so I'm okay.
I bet they tried that on a late season of The Walking Dead. Nobody noticed.
Probably.
That feels like a season 12 kind of thing.
That show's way too serious for a denture bite. That show's deathly serious and takes itself deathly seriously. So, and then we get the lawnmower scene, right, where he kind of leaves and he comes back and he's got a great action movie, very Ash line, right? The party's over line. Is extremely Ash, and this whole part is extremely Ash. Like the Ash from the Evil Dead, obviously, with the blood all over his face, except for his eyes are pretty clean, and he looks like insane. Great physical comedy here. So much blood, so much gore. Like, this is crazy. It's just still to this day in 2025, an insane scene to watch.
It is, and it is, you know, nothing against CGI, but it's all practical, and like it just feels there's a weight to it that just makes it feel so much more, you know, when the blade is actually chopping into things, it feels like things are really getting chopped up, right? Like that blood looks and moves and feels like real liquid. He gets so much, again, just this like silent comedy stuff. The pull start on the lawnmower, there's so much tension, and in that there's a couple of gags with that where he has to reach out and restart the lawnmower a few times. Like, I love that kind of stuff, you know. It's like level 1 easy mode, not even, right? Like, it's still a pretty fun thing, but it's like, all right, we got this lawnmower, we're gonna chop up some zombies with it, but nope, we're gonna like use that prop and use that gag, like, you know, in every way that we possibly can. He's not like, all I remember is him just kind of swinging it around and zombies getting chopped up, but actually it's a scene, right? Like, it's not just, here's this thing, here's this fun idea I had. It's like everything that we do with it is going to be interesting and fun and kind of move the story along. I love that stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, Void is like the final kill here or whatever. And he, you know, I love that when he's like pinned to the ground and he can't get the thing going, he uses the arm of one of the you know, decapitated zombies or to pull the string and start it. And then I love that moment where he like, you know, Void's just like spinning on it, right? He's not getting chopped up. He's just spinning on it. And so he like grabs like the gut to stop him from moving or whatever. He lets the gut go around his, like the intestine wrap around his arm. So he can like hold it still, and then he gets all chopped up and killed. You know, we didn't talk about the nice woman got bit, right? And the uncle wants to kill her, and Paquita won't let her kill her. And you the whole time you think this, right? This is leading up to her turning into a zombie and doing something and getting killed in some crazy way, right? But what in fact happens is when she's about to turn, I don't know, the baby like rips through her skull, rips her skull in half.
Oh, and this is like great. Yeah, pulls it apart.
Pulls it apart and is like
Amazing.
puppeting her to try to attack. I was flabbergasted by it. Like, it's just one of the things where like it's just not what I was. We talked about Final Destination a couple of weeks ago, and it's like it's one of those things where like you think you know what's gonna happen, and it just pulls a fast one on you, and you're like, this is not at all what I thought was gonna happen. I thought she was gonna turn to a zombie and Paquita have to kill her in some weird way, you know. Not that this baby would rip her skull in half.
And it's an end of the movie kind of gag, right? Like, you saw that earlier on, like things would not live up to that, but like here it's like, what else can we do? Oh wait, we can do this, but wait, there's more. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Baby dies as well.
Doesn't die in the blender though.
Doesn't die, but that's another fake out gag, right? I think that's really funny and really good.
Well, a lesser movie just like hits puree with the baby in the blender, like, oh, isn't that gross? But this one's like, nope, we're actually trying to build, again, a comedic sequence, right? With a little bit of tension and a little bit of push and pull, and I love that. And the blender does get used.
It does, with a half of a face guy. She grinds them into nothing, which I thought was good. And I like that she gets a bunch of stuff to do as well, like we're talking about, like this very much is divided, right? And then we get this crazy mom. I'm assuming it's some sort of like costume, right? Like it's some sort of half animatronic, half like actual person in there. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of what's her name, Harriet the Hippo or whatever from Meet the Feebles.
But this is a really impressive,
gigantic,
gigantic.
Like
they're staying on top of a house at one point.
Yep.
Yeah, this thing is huge. It has like articulating features and limbs.
But looks like Elizabeth Moody, I think, is the actress. Like, does look like her. It's just a really great effect. Yeah,
great effect. Puts Lionel back in her womb.
Of course, right? Like, again, it's textbook Oedipal stuff.
Yeah, and
then he chainsaws his way out.
She dies. Well, maybe. And then they go off and walk off into like the night as, you know, oh, everything's fine and good. And we get closing credits. That's the movie. Yeah, I mean, like I think it's a lot of fun. I think that, like I said, I think it's far and away the best movie he's made so far to this point in his career. And it's got some of the most clever and creative kills and splatter stuff I've ever seen in a movie. You know, bar none.
Yeah, I am sorry that I've spent so many years not making this part of my like regular Halloween rotation. I forgot how good this was. It's so much fun. Like this Return of the Living Dead is like that too, where it's just, it's kind of a blast all the way through. And yes, it kind of scratches your itch for horror stuff, but also, it's just really silly and really fun. And you can like have a few beers with it and have some friends over. And I mean, I think you need the right friends for this one. That one,
Yeah.
I think is a little tamer of a movie, but it's definitely that same sort of vibe where it's just like, let's have a good time with something kind of, bloody and gross.
Yeah, I mean, this totally isn't like, I will say, isn't the type of movie that, even though I really like the gore effects and the sequences and stuff like that, it's not a regular rotation type of movie. For me, it never would be. But I do think that I like something that cuts it a little bit more with other stuff, but I do still think this is a really interesting movie. And I'm really happy that I've seen it again for the first time in 20 plus years. So
yeah, me too. It's been a while. I don't know if it's been that long, but
Yeah.
it did. This is another one of those that I remembered really liking it, and I think seeing it again, and particularly in the context of the show, just really enjoyed it that much more this time.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, but we're leaving behind, straight out horror Peter Jackson after this. Next time we'll be talking about Heavenly Creatures, his sort of foray into, I don't know, prestige filmmaking with Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky, and we'll get all into that next time. And then after that, we are full on studio movie time. American,
Jackson Goes Hollywood, yeah.
Studio movies time after this. I'm really, really excited to talk about The Frighteners. Really, really excited to talk about that movie. But
me too. I hope that one holds up. It's been a while since I've seen that.
It hasn't been that long since I've seen it. So the last time I saw it, I really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping that still holds up. And then after that, we're going to Middle Earth after that. So it should be a good time on that one. I guess I want to just, what are your feelings? This is one distinct era of Jackson's career that we just covered. How are you feeling about the series so far, and how are you feeling about, what are your thoughts on Jackson right at this moment in his career, thinking back on just these three movies?
Well, I think, I want to forget about, as I said, Meet the Feebles just made me sad and uncomfortable and sick. And, I kind of wish that wasn't part of the filmography. Dead Alive to me feels very much like the proper follow-up to Bad Taste, which it was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the movie where it's like, okay, he was kind of developing these skills making Bad Taste, and it took him a really long time to make it. And it's like, let's see what we can do. How over the top can we be with the gore? And, how can we sort of extend this action sequence to make it a little bit more complicated and give it a little bit more, stuff going on. And this feels like really kind of the payoff to that. So this is, it does feel like kind of the culmination of something, right? Like, like I don't see, this reminds me so much of Bad Taste and very little of Meet the Feebles, I guess is what I'm trying to say, where, he had this kind of idea and this aesthetic and this sort of project that he, let's combine extreme gore with just very, very silly slapsticky comedy and fun characters, quippy kind of banter back and forth kind of stuff. This movie feels like, as I said before, kind of as far as you could go with that. And it really is, if you liked Bad Taste, this is so much better, right? Like this is not that I didn't enjoy Bad Taste, not that I won't watch that again, but this one I think is like an all-timer, and that one is just like, a step on the way to making this. So yeah, I mean, it's, as I said before, though, like, you couldn't keep doing this. There's no way, you can't top this in a lot of ways. So, if he truly wanted to be a filmmaker that was going to make a name for himself, you got to go somewhere else from here, because this is, it's the end of something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have expected where he actually went, but like I said, something, a more sedate sort of horror film, an adaptation, Stephen King adaptation or something like that would have been where I would have thought he would have, tried to go from this. But it is, if he'd never made another movie, if he'd become, if Weta, like if he just kind of took off as a special effects company, the CEO of a special effects company, I could sort of see that, right? Like, these were the movies I wanted to make. I showed you everything I could possibly show you, in this vein. And now I'm going to go do something else. Shepherd other people through this process. But it turns out that that's not, well, he does that too.
He does that too, for sure.
One of the things I like about Peter Jackson is executive producing things and, getting other filmmakers kind of the breaks that he got, which is cool. I always like when filmmakers do that. But yeah, it's an interesting start to a filmography that This reminds me a little bit of, I mean, totally different movies, but like Brian De Palma kind of started out doing something very different from what he ended up doing, right?
Hmm.
Like he became known as the Hitchcock sort of, devotee or
Hmm.
rip-off artist. People who don't like De Palma, like he's just low-rent Hitchcock or something like that. But he starts out making these very subversive. Chris and I were going to do a podcast about. We're going to do the same thing with De Palma that we did with John Carpenter,
Mm.
and you know, I wanted to do that particularly because I wanted to see those early De Palma movies. Like everyone knows him for Carrie and The Untouchables and Body Double. I was going to say Body Heat, Body Double,
Hmm.
Dress to Kill, that kind of stuff, Femme Fatale. But he starts out making these, subversive 60s comedies, like with Robert De Niro and stuff like that. And it kind of feels like a similar career where Peter Jackson does this like low budget kind of shocking splattery sort of stuff and then goes on to, make the prestige picks and do
Yeah.
things that are, more studio friendly, more audience friendly or something like that. Like he starts out real punk rock and then gets kind of, mainstream in some sense.
I think when you listen to that talk in that documentary, the Movie Fields documentary, he does say, he goes like, I don't consider myself like a horror director,
He says, I want to make the movies that I wanted to see.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably the sort of like the key to looking at his career, right? Is thinking like he wanted to make these movies when he made them, and then when he was done making these movies, he was like, no, I want to make something else now. I don't want to
Well,
just
that's
keep
it, right?
doing this.
Your tastes change over time.
Exactly.
And like you made it. Like the movie you wanted to see, if it was Dead Alive, like you did it. There's really nothing else you could have done with it. Like mission accomplished. So
yeah. And that's where he diverges, I think, from some of these other guys that are, big in this era or coming up in this era, even like a Raimi, who does go off and do a bunch of different things. But I think when you think of Sam Raimi, you still think like horror director, even though he's done all this other stuff. That seems to kind of be his sort of like home base in many ways, right? And
well, it would be like Tarantino making Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and then a PG-rated romantic comedy,
right?
Something like a screwball comedy, because he loves, His Girl Friday and stuff like that. He could have easily done that, and he kind of doesn't. I mean, Jackie Brown was a departure, but is it really that much of a departure?
No, definitely not. No, not at all.
Whereas Heavenly Creatures is. Well, it is in some sense.
Yeah, it is in some ways. I mean, I think we're gonna watch that movie and be like, well, we can definitely see some of the stuff, right? It's still a movie that has a foot in sort of a, off-putting you, right? It wants you to feel kind of bad, like that movie definitely does. So I think we'll see that, but I think just in general, I think just like the full career trajectory, right? It's like Raimi comes back to horror after he goes away for a little
periodically,
while. Yeah. He'll come back to it, and it always seems like, oh, I've got like this horror movie I want to make. You know what I mean? He's always, and he has a whole, producing shingle where all he does is produce horror movies for other filmmakers. Like it's a key. Like Ghost House or whatever is like his whole thing where he does that. That is not what Jackson does, right? Jackson. And so I think looking at these three movies and seeing so much connective tissue between these three, it really is fascinating to see how his career is going to change, in many ways. And I mean, even someone like Carpenter, who you brought up, right? Who I feel like is a more eclectic director than people give him credit for, right? But you could still feel like he's got his like spine in this certain type of filmmaking, right? This certain type of genre stuff, right?
Well, he's called a master of horror, and he likes that title.
Exactly.
He doesn't mind that. Whereas I think Jackson, and I'm not saying he's trying to. He makes Heavenly Creatures. He's like, I don't just want to be the splatter horror guy, because he has, I think, a lot of respect for this kind of stuff.
No, I don't think it's anything at all. I just think it's like a thing where he's like, but now I want to do something else. Like, and I don't think it's like it's like looking down on horror. I just think it's a thing where there are guys who that's in their blood. That's the thing they want to do. And even when they go and do other things, they always sort of gravitate back, or when they feel like they've lost their way, they go back towards that thing, right? They go like, okay, you know what? I tried to do this thing. It didn't work. So I'm going to just go back and kind of go retreat to my safe ground and make the thing that I know how to make really well, right?
Yeah. And very often that doesn't work. Like I always think the music analog to that, right? The bands that start out like, we're a guitar band, we're a rock band, and then they sort of evolve, and it's like, let's bring in more synthesizers, let's bring in drum machines and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, well, that's not really going so well, so let's make a rock album again. And it's usually kind of just a half-baked version of what came before.
Yeah.
As you probably know, I'm a big Smashing Pumpkins fan, and there's
Yeah,
been
well,
a lot of that kind of shenanigans.
a lot of
happening there.
I mean, the Smashing Pumpkins haven't made an album that matters in a very long time.
There's some good late period stuff.
I'm not saying there, but I didn't say not
Yeah.
or good stuff. But there's a difference between something good and something being something mattering in the cultural sense. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. But I mean, you see a lot of filmmakers do that, right? Like they kind of start out in one mode, they move to something else, and it's like, yeah. But we want to see another horror movie out of you. We want to see another, we want to see something dark out of you, and you've just kind of moved off to that. Or we want to see something sillier out of you, and you've kind of, gotten serious or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the thing whenever Spielberg has tried to go back to that sort of early Spielberg stuff.
Yeah.
He's struggled with it because I just don't think and I think he even will say this. It's just not what is in him anymore. Right. So he's doing like an impression of himself. Right. And that's what you want to kind of avoid. And I mean, we'll talk about that with Jackson as well, when we get to the later period, Middle Earth stuff a little bit, I think. But, just really fascinating to end this part of his career and move on to this next part of his career, which I think is like the next two movies are a whole other like section of his career where it's like, where could this have gone? If he had kind of stayed in this lane. And then obviously after that, we go into the third phase of his career, which is, the biggest movies you could possibly ever think of. Right? It's just like, that's where he's at in his life and in his movie making.
It is interesting though. I mean, we are all like, to talk about Peter Jackson, this is one of the reasons why I kind of was hoping he didn't win the poll, was there is, like I said, there's pre-Lord of the Rings and there's post-Lord of the Rings, right? And so we are kind of building up to something there, and that is the core of his career. No matter what he does, right, from here on out, he's still making movies, or can still make movies.
Still make movies. He isn't still making movies, but
he isn't. But is still very much alive and healthy and well, and could easily get funding for a movie.
Yes,
it's not like
John
Waters
studio
and
would
David Lynch, at the end of their careers, where it's like no one wants to give them money to make. Like people don't watch those kind of movies.
A studio would slobber all over themselves if Peter Jackson was like, I want to come back and make a big movie,
and that would be the selling point. Is like this is the new epic from Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
But we are kind of building up to this monumental, massive thing that, like, everything is kind of leading to that. But you do see little pieces, right? He's kind of like, to assemble that huge thing, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And we do see, I mean, I've been saying it, with all these movies, some of the emotional stuff. I mean, the melodrama, the sort of heightened, love story stuff in those movies, you see that a little bit in these early things.
For sure.
You see, some of the, like I said, the villains, the orcs, that stuff. You see a little bit of that developing here. Then in Heavenly Creatures, he like adds on a couple more pieces, like some emotional groundedness. And then with the Frighteners, he adds the kind of studio experience and like the big movie. We're not making low budget trash anymore. We're making something that's meant for like a large audience. So it's like all the pieces are starting to fall into place, and then it all kind of culminates in that 3-film.
Yeah. But I will say, like, people know where we had I feel like two of the most interesting movies we're going to talk about in this whole series come after the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, which are King Kong and The Lovely Bones, one of which I think is mostly more successful than people give it credit for, and one of which is kind of a disaster. But I think that they're both super interesting to talk about and what they're doing, and so I think we've got a lot of cool stuff ahead of us. So, that's going to wrap up our talk on Undead Alive / Braindead. Next time we'll be talking about Heavenly Creatures. But until then, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. It really, really helps. The reviews really, really help. So if you can leave us a review, it would really mean a lot to us. So please do that. And until next time, though, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who's listening or watching. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.